Well, hi, this is Custom Works. I'm Clint Allen, and as we're working through our Cobra Powerstroke project, we're going to be showing you the manifold, specifically exhaust manifold. The two bolts are broke on this side right here, and I'll give you some tips and tricks on how to remove these. And as far as the up pipes goes, we have our own in-house build, our Vortec up pipe system that we'll be installing, and you'll be along for the ride, and that won't be on this video. But let's get ahead on the bolts here. Now I know I'm cheating, but in a couple of videos I have mentioned, you know, when you're underneath and you're changing the oil or doing stuff up on top, you know, get in there and take a look. And you'll probably discover, because of the age of these Powerstrokes, that you'll find what is normal, that a lot of these bolts start looking like they're melting away. In this particular case, right here, we have one bolt that was just completely melted up, and the other one's broke and it was leaking right here. So what we're going to do is show you here real quick how to remove them. Now I know I'm working without a cab, but this can be easily done the same way, either from underneath, coming through the wheel well, or from up on top. Yeah, you'll probably be doing some jumping around. The most powerful oil that I have ran into for doing this is taking a squirt bottle, squirt can, that normally is for squirting oil. Put 50% lacquer thinner in it and 50% of the power steering fluid, or preferably automatic transmission fluid. Shake it up real good, and before you start, if you're in the situation a day before you start, just come out a few times and give her a good old squirt down. Squirt it up by the threads, squirt it down through the back, squirt the top of the heads itself, and do that a few times the day before. And the day that you start, right before you start, do the same thing again. Now, what we want to do, because normally these bolts weld themselves to the manifold, is we're going to take a air chisel. Now, I'm going to be using a larger air chisel, but for the naysayers in the comments, they do make shorties, and they do fit right in here, even though you've got the cab or the wheel well in the way. So now that that's out of the way, let's show you. So what I simply did is I just took the normal end of the air chisel, and then I put a 13 socket on it, kind of cut 2/3 of that 13 socket away. That way it doesn't slide away when I'm hammering on them. So let's get in there and so that I can guarantee is going to loosen up the bolts from welding themselves to the manifold. So if I haven't said so already, the two bolts that hold on the up pipe here, there's no use in farting around with them. Just get up here with a grinder and just cut them off. The bolts aren't going to be any good anyways. They're not savable, and if you're replacing the manifold gasket and the bolts, well, you're going to get bolts along with the kit anyways for the up pipe. So just cut them off right here, real easy, done, handled. Moving on to the bolts here. Now that we've done that, what we're going to do is tighten them a little bit. Now you're going to have to pay attention here to make sure that you're pulling on it, and keep an eye on the bolt itself, because what you do not want to do obviously is bust it off inside, because that's a whole nother snake hole that you're going to have to go down welding on a new bolt or extracting it, or however you feel you want to do it. But if you follow this, you shouldn't have the issue. So you pull up on a little bit and you'll hear it crack usually. A lot of times when I use the impact there, or the air chisel there, as I'm air chiseling on it, a lot of times you can hear these make that crack, that where that bolt has let loose, because you've made the rust that is sitting inside the manifold it's knocked loose and loosened up. So anyways, tighten her up, and just keep on going all the way down. We're not going to keep on farting around with that. Then come back and then start loosening it. Make sure the whole bolt is turning. If the whole bolt is not turning, then what we want to do is we want to stop, get some of that lacquer thinner and ATF in there, and hit it again with the air hammer, and then come back, loosen it up, tighten it, loosen it up, tighten it, and slowly then, and you'll feel if it's real easy, you got it. You don't have to worry about busting it off inside the block. And what you'll do is you're going to unscrew it all the way. Then put some lube on here and tighten her back up again. Get it nice and snug and keep on working your way all the way down, doing the same thing. The reason why we want to reinstall these is because the way the manifold is made, if you start removing, the time you get to the center here, you're going to be busting bolts off. It's just the way it is from the stress of the manifold, the heat over the years. It's going to just warp out. She's going to be like a banana. That's the whole concept here. Just loosen it up, tighten her back down. So, moving on to the next one here. This one already cracked loose, and we're going to real slow go down, come back up, go down, come back up. Now, you probably made some comments already about the size of the wrench that I'm using, but do not use a wrench that's got a pivot head on it. You want to be square right on here. You don't want to be sitting kitty cock. Two things are going to happen. You're going to bust the bolt for sure. And the second thing that's going to happen is you're not going to have a nice square on these rusted bolts. You're not going to be nice and square with your socket on there. Now, in case you haven't done a whole lot of auto work before, and these bolts right here are rusted so far, and the number 13, because most of these are going to be number 13s, but the number 13 basically is loose. Get out a number 12, sacrificial number 12, and hammer it on there. And then slowly work it, loosen it on up. And once you get them all loosened up, then you can go ahead and remove them. Or in my case, since I'm working outside with no cab on, then we can just go ahead and get them out of there. So we got one that's going to be a bugger, possibly two. And that we'll have to slam a number 12 on too. And then let's not forget the exhaust back pressure sensor tube. Get that on off of there. Now I'm not quoting socket sizes, I'm not quoting wrench sizes or anything like that, because there are differences throughout the years. You can have aftermarket items that were previously installed on your truck. If you're gonna work on your vehicle, you'll get her figured out. So we got that off. So, and as I said earlier, there was 2 bolts that were clearly broke, and basically this is the way that I handle it. I just take an old nut. If you haven't seen that trick, most of us here viewing have seen that trick. But if you're new, once again, to doing repairs, if you don't have a welder, you're going to have to borrow your buddy's welder, or whatever the case may be. Go rent one, because it's just going to save you that much aggravation. Take your nut, put it on, take your nut, weld it on, and I mean weld that baby. You got to make sure that you have got that nut and that bolt all the way through that nut completely welded. Let her cool. Come back after it. Don't come back after it with some water. Preferably come back after it with some WD-40, whatever you use that you like, the CRC or CRV, any type of panther piss basically, and cool it down with that. And then slowly. Now this one's already pretty. And turn it all the way out and get her out of there. Chances are, once again, with the ages of these trucks, you're going to end up having a broken bolt. You're going to end up breaking a bolt. No matter how careful you are, it's going to happen. Now, if you break the bolt off right at the edge of the block or inside of the block, yeah, wrenches are going to be flying, but you're going to need to go down and get the wrench yourself if you don't have one. Most people don't have one, but a tap and die set. You're going to have to get in there in a very comfortable position. Make sure that you're sitting on center of that broken off stud and drill it out and then re-tap it. If you're patient and you take your time, you won't have to make a larger hole. But if you start drilling and you find yourself that you are off ever so slightly and you're a quarter way into the block, just stop. Put a larger drill bit in and tap it to a larger size. Once again, just you're going to save yourself a ton of headaches doing it that way. So that's how we handle that. Now, one of the things that most people, well, most of the things that all people do is they're just in it to get the new manifolds on or to get the new bolts on, whatever the case may be. Stop. Take a chill pill. Take a look inside. What's going on inside here? Because that's what's going on inside the motor. If you got yourself nice, clean manifold, or you run into one that's got a little bit of oil in it, or it's heavier with soot, got a problem in that cylinder. You could have an injector that might have a cracked tip and it's just starting, or you could have yourself a bad ring, a bad valve, whatever the case may be, and it's just starting. Good way to see the health of what's going on inside those cylinders just by seeing what's going on inside of here. But anyways, Now back on the installation end of this, you know, there's just some things that should go on unsaid, but we got to put into the factor that there might be somebody watching here that is looking for, you know, the information who's never done this. So as you've seen, go through, clean everything off, hit her with the old wire brush, blow out with air each one of the bolt holes, make sure everything, all the debris is out of there. And if you're installing brand new, which this is not, then you can just forego a gasket. Now this is probably going to be a little controversial, but they are designed, if it's brand new, to just force it up against there with the bolts, and you will not have any type of leaks because the block heats up, causes it to seal. It's the way that these are designed. This is not some full-fledged super redo here, super rebuild. We're just putting it back out onto the road again. So I'm going to be using the old manifolds, and then we're going to be putting the gasket in there. If you're new to it, you're going to do the same thing, shiny side out. So I have gone through and put a little bit of oil on these, on the ends. Now keep in mind that when you do this, your torque specs are going to be off, meaning that the oil is going to allow it to slide to be turned in further than what it ought to be. If you're installing without a gasket, new manifolds, don't do this. I am doing this because I know that my torque value is going to be off, and I know that this is going to take up the cushion. I don't want to have to come back 6 months later and have to retorque these bolts. So shiny side out. Now I'm gonna, even though we got the next video after that is going to be the installation of the up pipes, keep in mind that looking at, and the reason why we're going through this is because we had broken bolts, which means we've got air loss, exhaust gas loss, which is going up to the turbo. If you've never done this modification on your truck or upgrade, whatever you want to call it, obviously this is factory original, and you're losing all kinds of pressure to the turbo with this. That's why we're changing that out too. Now keep in mind when you're doing this, whether you're putting the gasket in or not, doesn't make a difference. Don't go after it with an impact. If you start that bolt out and the bolt itself gets run in there just a little bit crooked, you're in a world of hurt. You're going to end up screwing up your threads. It's not going to get in there tight enough. You're going to be constantly fighting, and the job that you started out with in order to improve your truck just got degraded slightly. Then you have to pull the whole thing off, and you know, yeah, I don't have the cab on here, you have the cab on. It's a real big pain in the butt to get back in there and tap those out. You want to do it as little as possible. Avoid that tapping. So don't be afraid to do this part once the bolts are for sure in and they're threading properly. Most of a lot of people don't have all the tools. In the comments, I do get comments of, you know, where's the big shop? I don't do this in the big shop, and the reason why I don't do it in the big shop is because you don't have a $50,000 lift. You don't have all the tools and equipment. When we get to changing over the rear main, I'm going to show you how you can do it without the $150 tool and still end up with a top-notch job. We're doing this here because I know you don't have hundreds of $1,000s of equipment. Some of you at the best have a bucket full of wrenches, and that is the way it is. There's no use in showing you all kinds of fancy ways of doing it with expensive equipment. So go ahead, run these in and run them all in so they're just slightly snug. All right, so we got them in there. They're slightly snug. This is where we want to get very specific now. When you're using a torque wrench, the longer extension that you put on, the longer socket that you put on is going to mess up your torque rating. So use a standard short socket. Now the torque ratings on these are 45 foot-pounds. If you're new to doing mechanical work, there's a difference between inch-pounds and foot-pounds. If you're looking through any type of book, make sure that you find out specifically if it's inch or foot-pounds. I've had a few people make comments that, well, I was reinstalling the bolts on my injectors and there's no way you can get in 10 foot-pounds on the bolts that hold down the injectors. Yep, it's inch-pounds. So let's start from the center and work our way out. If you've never used one of these, when you hit the correct torque rating, it'll make a click. There's the click. There's the click. There's the click. There's the click. Double click. Click. There's the click. There's the click. When it starts getting tight and you start getting close to the torque value, kind of slow down a little bit and wait for it to click. Wait a few minutes and then come back to it, start in the center again, and just do a real quick click. See how that's loose? See how that's loose? Now we're going to wait a few more minutes again. We're tightening these up, and that gasket is acting as a little cushion. Now if you're putting brand new manifold on once again, you don't need the gasket. Just do this 2 times. But since we've got the gasket here, we're gonna wait a few minutes, and we're probably gonna check probably up to 5 times usually is what it takes at the max. Sometimes it's just 3, but there we go. So the gasket's finally starting to lose its spongeability. Yeah, real nice there. So that is how we do the manifolds on a 7.3 Powerstroke. Any questions, any comments, any help you can give the community, hit the comments, let us know. And I hope you've learned something, and you take it easy, and you have a good day. And don't forget to put your EBP tube back on. Till the next video.
Yes, ma'am.